How y'all doing today? My name is Sean, and I work with Gen3. And so Gen3's motto is to create a data commons that co-locate data storage and computing infrastructure with commonly used software services, tools, and apps, and analyzing for analyzing and sharing data. So sharing data is one of the main goals. Next slide, please. And that is seen in our infrastructure here. So we are the ones that will collect all the data and then we'll index these data so that we can then have hosted data to send out to our other sources such as Picture, Broad, and Seven Bridges. And so we are the data source, but we also then are the authorization and authentication source. And we have a multitude of microservices that allow for us to control the data as well as create cohorts and pass them on. Next slide, please. So the main point to take home with Gen3 is that Gen3 creates pointers to data files and then links them to metadata. So we'll take these files and we'll index them, and this will create a mint for the data file, which will have a globally unique ID known as a GUID. And by using these GUIDs, we then can point to these files across multiple groups and infrastructures. And we then combine these index data files with our graph model. And this allows us to now relate the metadata that would be within the node, such as subject IDs, demographics, other clinical or phenotypic information, and then create edges between these nodes to eventually link to the data files, which then allow for us to filter for data files based on other clinical information. Next slide, please. So this all comes together on the exploration page, which, as noted before, it allows us to display metadata found within the graph model and then apply it to our files. So then we can do filtering and cohort creation. This also allows us for charts and visualizations, such as summary statistics, how many subjects, how many studies, how many are of X, Y, or Z phenotypes. We have charts and bar graphs and whatnot. But then once you're done with the cohort creation, you're then able to take your cohort and you can pass them on to other workspaces such as Terra and Seven Bridges via PFB. And this then allows other workspaces to use this hosted data. Next slide, please. So I'm just gonna quickly walk through kind of how to create a cohort in Gen3. And then for reinforcement, I'm going to then do an actual demo of it so that you can kind of get a see and feel for it. So it's not just little snippets of images. So in this case, we want to create a cohort and based on some kind of traits of interest, and then hand it off to a workspace. Next slide, please. So first things first, you'll come to gen3.biodatacatalyst.nhlbi.nih.gov, and we'll go to log in using the ERA Commons credentials. Next slide. So after logging in, you'll then want to navigate to the exploration page. This will allow you to create your cohort of interest. Next slide. So on the exploration page, we have dynamic summary statistics displayed at the top, and we'll have two panels. One is a data panel and another one is a file panel. The data tab will contain many different facets, leveraging harmonized variables for the subjects. So it's going to be clinical information that either describe the subject or the project. And then the files tab will be everything that is describing metadata about the actual files. Next slide. most people will also notice that we have this toggle at the top where it's the data access options. So when everyone first arrives at the exploration page, you'll see that you're always on data with access. So once you've signed in with your NIH login, you'll be shown all the data sets you have access to. But there will also be a data without access, and this will show you what data sets are also available, but you have to apply for via dbGaP. Next slide. So on our data tab, we have 3 different categories. We have the project tab, which is anything that's specifically defined as a piece of work and anything under that umbrella. Subject is collection of data related to the subject, specific to the experiment. Usually this is demographic information. And then harmonized variables, and this is a selection of clinical properties that were defined by the consortium for harmonization, and it covers multiple nodes of information. Next slide. Oh, sorry, there we go. All right, so in this example, we're going to start on the project tab. And for the program, we're going to just select the option tutorial. So this tutorial is set up open access for everyone. It contains both synthetic phenotypes as well as actual genotypic information. And so as soon as you select the file or select the program, you'll see that the project updates as well as the subjects. So you'll see 3 projects and 7,633 subjects. Next slide. So we'll then jump over to the Harmonized Variables tab, and we'll say that for this situation, we want to look for any subjects that have an LDL that are at least 70 or greater. Again, you'll see that the projects available now changes to 1, and the number of subjects is 2,354. You'll also see that the table below is updating, and you will see that all the files that are all the subjects that are being referenced now belong to the tutorial synthetic data set 1. Next slide, please. And then finally, we'll jump over to the subject tab, and we'll say that we're looking for only male subjects in this case. Again, we'll see the number update, and now we have a custom cohort created. Next slide. So at this point, we have the ability to export to a variety of workspaces. We can export to Terra, 7 Bridges, just a general PFB, which allows you to export all data associated with the cohort, as well as the Gen3 workspaces. So in this case, we want to note that we're not exporting data files. We're only exporting pointers to those data files. So you're not exporting, terabytes of data. You're just exporting a string that will then later reference a data file located in a bucket. Next slide, please. So in this case, if you were to export to Terra or 7 Bridges, you would then be brought to those platforms for further ingestion of these data sets. Next slide. So if I can share my screen for just 1 second, I'm just going to run through this one more time. And hopefully then everybody can kind of see within the realm of just a simple workflow through this. So we'll start here by logging in. And so we're going to use the NIH login, and we'll sign right in. And then we'll find ourselves back on the landing page. We'll jump over to exploration. And so again, here's data with access, without access, and then all data. So we're just going to go with the access we have. Go to tutorial, jump over here. LDL, we're going to say a minimum of 70. And then subjects we want are male. And so then at this point, you can see all the information that's available. You can see data types that are available with this cohort that you've selected. And so at this point, we would then choose to select, in this case, we'll say Terra. And so then it'll start exporting the data set over to the Terra workspaces. Next slide. And so we've added some useful links, some information about Gen3, and then how to go about discovering data on Gen3 via BioData Catalyst specifically. We had some extra information about GA4GH DIR standards and how it applies to our data and retrieving information. And then we have some extra tutorials for how to take data from Gen3 and then start a workspace and actually perform some pipeline work.